All right, I think we've got you, Paul.
Okay. Right, can you hear me now and see me?
And we can even see you.
Awesome. Right.
Okay, so let me share your screen.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to make you the presenter so we can pick your screen.
Oh, hold on.
Beautiful, we can see it.
Yeah, okay. All right, let me move that off to the side. All right, so you can see my slides.
Yep.
No, cool. All right, we have success. So everybody's on?
We've got everybody on. We have some people who are saying that they can't get on, and I believe it's because the webinar was so oversubscribed that it's full. So I just want to let everybody know that we are recording the webinar. I have placed in the chat box a link to where the webinar will be available after 5 o'clock today. So please distribute that amongst your team and watch it there. We have also a 2 o'clock webinar today that we put on a second webinar because it was so popular. So that's filling up fast, but that is also an option if people want to watch it live. We've got lots of questions coming in, Paul, about technical issues, and I know we're going to talk to some of that now.
Yeah.
But perhaps we could just start with a big picture of who you are and why we're doing this for our industry.
Okay, cool. So guys, my background's pretty eclectic. I'm ex-British Armed Forces, spent 8 years flying in helicopters doing anti-submarine warfare, helicopter search and rescue, went through combat survival and resistance to interrogation training, which is where I get interested in all things stress and resilience. And since I left the forces, I've become a bit of a geek. So I'm now a neuroscientist, an exercise physiologist, and a nutritionist. And I'm currently doing a PhD in applied psychology, where I'm focusing on resilience and working with the Australian Defence Force. So why we're doing this right now is because of the whole COVID-19 shit show, as I like to refer to it as, that it's having a pretty catastrophic impact on lots of different industries. Me as a corporate speaker, I'm pretty entwined with the whole travel industry and conference industry. So both our industries have been pretty decimated, and it's having an impact on people's mental health and their physical health, their whole well-being. So this is kind of why we're doing this right now, is to give people tools that they need to be able to lean in to these challenges, because they're not going to go away anytime soon.
So just on that, Paul, I think we could touch on maybe the registration process quickly. What we decided to do to make it really easy for all you guys to participate is, rather than announce the program and have everyone log in themselves, we wanted to get everybody included. So we got you guys to send us the details of the people in your office or that you want to do this challenge with. And what we did is we had a sharp cutoff line of 5 o'clock last Wednesday. And what that enabled us to do was to upload everybody's emails that they've given us into the back end, so that Paul could send out the registration details this morning with information on how to access it and log in. Now, I just want to make a point here that this is about doing this together and as an industry. So if you have given me details of either yourself or people in your team where there was three or less people, you will notice that you have been joined into a team with other people. And that is okay. And you may even have a slightly different team name. That is some work that we did in the back end to make it collaborative and easy for us to have the system working. So Paul recommended that teams of under 4 didn't work as well. So you may find that you're in a team with the people that you wanted to be within, but also other people. So get on board, work with them, have fun with this, and that's okay. And if you've got a slightly different name, don't worry about it. It's me being creative and giving people different names as I've joined you together in bigger teams.
And look, I would just like to say that the reason is the way the system works. your team points get divided by the amount of people in the team. So all of the points of every user is put together, divided by the number of people in the team, but there's a minimum of 4. So that's why we have that cutoff of 4. If you were in a team of 3, you'd be disadvantaged because all of your points are totaled up and they'd be divided by 4. And I just want to put a big call out to Joe for putting all of this together.
Oh.
Normally it's done within one organization and they just export email lists and they just assign them into teams. But Joe's had 100 different ones just coming in randomly left, right, and center. Now, there will be some teething issues. So if there's a spelling in your email, if there's one spelling thing, you wouldn't have got the email. Check your junk mail. The emails went out this morning. The system told me there was an issue, so I sent them again. So you may have had 2 emails. It's the second one because each time it gives you a unique password. So it's the second one that you've got to do, right? But we can talk about this at the end. Joe, if there's any other comments that come up, you just let me know and then we'll address them at the end.
Yeah, I think the other thing is people have contacted me Thursday, Friday, or over the weekend saying they wanted to add people. And so what we'll do is rather than adding them, we're going to send out a blanket email later, aren't we, Paul, with just a code where they can register themselves.
Yeah, and I can give that to people now. It's just after capital letters, AFTA 456.
What is that?
And then after 456, capital AFTA 456.
Great.
And
so
no
I'm just
spaces.
going to put that in the chat. So if you have contacted me via email and want to add additional people to your team, give them that, or the program, give them that code after 456. I've just put it in the chat. That will save me 60 emails.
Absolutely. And guys, I'll show you at the end how you can then request to join the team, right? So we'll do a bit of an app tour at the end. So are we ready to kick off,
over to you,
Joe?
Paul. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thanks, Joe. So guys, as I said, welcome to the COVID shit show. And I just want to start off with the problem statement. We know that 1 in 5 Australians currently experience a mental illness in any year. And this is getting significantly worse because of COVID-19. So 3/4 of Australians have reported that their mental health has actually got worse. And that we know with all of this stuff that primary prevention is cheaper, it's more effective, and it's less painful. Yet only 1.5% of the health budget is actually spent on primary prevention of trying to help people before they get an issue. So that's the kind of problem statement. And we need to view it in the backdrop of this, because this is where we've all come from. And our genome is really important when we're talking about our health, both physical and mental. And we essentially have a hunter-gatherer's genome. So my favorite research quote in any journal I've ever read was from the Journal of Applied Physiology in 2012 by a researcher called Frank Booth. He's a professor of neuroscience. And he was talking about the human genome in this research study. And he said, and I quote him, "The human genome has not changed in over 45,000 years. The current human genome requires and expects us to be highly physically active for normal functioning." Now, note the way he didn't say optimal functioning, he said normal functioning. And I'm going to come back to that later on. But in this research paper, he also talked about our stress response system and how it has evolved over the last 2 million years in response to certain challenges or threats. So 3 minutes of screaming terror on the African savannah when you're being chased by a lion, and that is what we all know as our fight or flight response system, or fight, flight, or freeze, as it's more accurately known. And then we have a secondary, or a different part of our stress response system called the HPA axis. And that involves the hormone cortisol. So really, the first part, your fight or flight, is there for immediate threats. And then that cortisol is there for long-term challenges, right? And they both help us to adapt. But what we know is that when these stress response systems, which are supposed to be emergency systems, when they're turned on for long periods of time, that's when bad juju happens to our physical and mental health. And chronic release of cortisol can destroy you both physically and mentally. And some insights into what's going on. Really, this is the neuroscientist Antonio Damasio first showed in his lab how the brain actually responds to stress and how your amygdala can hijack your brain. So your amygdala is the part of your brain, deep in your brain, that senses and responds to stress and other strong emotions, but we're focused on stress here. And Damasio showed that when your amygdala senses a threat, that it can actually secrete chemicals out that block your rational thoughts coming from your frontal lobe. So basically, your amygdala says, talk to the hand, I'm in control of this brain, right? He called it amygdala hijack. We all know it as losing our shit, right? And you may have noticed that this is happening a little bit more. It may have happened a little bit more yesterday afternoon when us in Victoria got some announcements. But it's understanding that this is what is going on in your brain when you lose it. And if you're in danger, you want your amygdala to hijack your brain. But if you're not in danger, then it's not useful. And from long-term stress, we know there's some really sophisticated work has been done quite recently looking at workplace stress, and it gives us a window into chronic stress, which a lot of people have been suffering in my industry, in your industry. And in these studies, what they've done is they've taken a bunch of people and they've followed them over a period of 6 months or a year, and find out who's stressed and who's not. But they do brain imaging on them at the start and during and then at the end, and they can see that the people who are exposed to chronic stress, there are significant structural and functional changes in the brain because of stress. So what they're seeing is the prefrontal cortex is actually shrinking, it's getting withered away by stress, and the amygdala is growing bigger and more sensitive. So this makes a brain that is more responsive to stress and more acutely responsive to stress, that people aren't able to regulate their emotions as well. Their frontal lobes become impacted, so that whole planning, judgment, rational thinking part of the brain starts to become impacted. And it's exactly the same that we see in people with depression and anxiety, the same changes that happen in their brains. So we can see now this really strong link between chronic stress, depression, anxiety, but especially what's happening in the brain, right? And so that's the problem statement, if you like, and that this chronic stress is having a really negative impact. And so I'm just going to close my window here because I know it's a little bit noisy. Now, when this whole COVID thing happened, and when our borders get shut down and travel got shut down, and very much like you guys, I realized over the space of about a week, 10 days, that this was a big impact on my business. I had the oh shit moment back then, and I could see all of my bookings, all my conference bookings, all of my workshops that I had over the rest of the year all just disappeared, got cancelled within a period of about a week. And so in moments like that, I'm sure many of you guys had the same thing. You have the come to Jesus moment where you think this is pretty bloody negative, and this is going to have a massive impact. And then the tendency is to either become angry or start to feel sorry for yourself, and then very soon into that emotional response, I remembered this guy, Jim Stockdale. Now, Jim Stockdale was a fighter pilot in the Vietnam War, and he got shot down in the war quite early in the war, and he got captured by the Viet Cong and sent to a prison camp that the prisoners ended up nicknaming the Hanoi Hilton. And it was a very ironic nickname because it was the most horrendous prison camp in Vietnam. And Stockdale ended up doing 8 years in that prisoner of war camp. And 4 of those years he spent in solitary confinement, which is pretty much the worst thing you can do to a human, is put them in long-term solitary confinement. 2 of those years he spent in leg irons, in really horrible conditions. Now, not only did Stockdale survive, but he is attributed with helping his other prisoners get through. So he was one of the most senior officers in there. and he actually helped all of these guys get through. And there's a number of pretty famous people who were in that prison camp. One most of you will heard of is Senator John McCain, the US senator who died last year. And he went on record saying, if Jim Stockdale had not been in the Hanoi Hilton, I would not have survived, and many of my friends would not have survived. We owe our lives to Jim Stockdale. So Stockdale, when he was asked about his experience, you know, if he ever gave up hope, this is what he actually said. He said, I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life, which in retrospect, I would not trade. And it was very timely for me to become reminded, and I reread his book at the time, and it gave me a certain sense of inspiration. And I'm going to come back to this at the end and the relevance for all of us at the end. But the point here is that Stockdale, when he was asked how did he get through, he said it was because of the teachings of the Stoic philosophers. And he had spent a significant amount of time studying the Stoic philosophers, particularly somebody called Epictetus. And I think the Stoic philosophers, they're ancient Greeks and ancient Romans, and they've got really important messages for all of us today in these challenging times. And this, for the Stoics, they said that chasing happiness is a fool's game, but we can all live a life of what they call eudaimonia, which roughly translates from the ancient Greek as flourishing or fulfillment. And they said that there's three paths to this, or joins. It's like a triangle. So the first is living with arete. So that roughly translates from the ancient Greek as character or virtue. So it's living a virtuous life. And the Stoics were big on saying that when you are faced with huge challenges and that you can't control, they are just an opportunity to sharpen your character, to actually help you to practice some virtue and become a better human being. So around the outside, here's the key cardinal virtues of the Stoics: wisdom, judgment or morality, self-discipline or temperance, and courage. But they also then talked about taking responsibility. So you see that all these three are linked. And for the Stoics, this was about, there's a couple of different things. One was taking responsibility for your own thoughts, your own behaviors, and your own actions, but also taking responsibility for the cards that you have been dealt, for the hand that fate has actually given you. So they said that there is absolutely no point in criticizing about random things that the universe does, such as COVID-19. They said that you must take responsibility for the cards that you have been dealt. And so if we think of Epictetus, he was a slave, and he had a pretty horrible Roman master who beat him and actually crippled him. And he said, well, this is the hand that fate has dealt me. And if I'm going to be a cripple, I'm going to be the best damn cripple that I can possibly be. So this is thinking about, if we're going to have if we are all exposed to this COVID, then we need to be the best versions of ourselves and actually take responsibility for the hand that fate has dealt us. Now, linked into that, it's about focusing on what we can control. And here is Epictetus. And again, I think it's brilliant for what we're all experiencing right now. And he said, everything in your life is in two zones. Zone one is the stuff that is within your power or your will, or as we would say, within your control. He said, zone one contains things such as your belief systems, what you choose to be afraid of, what you choose to have as your desires, but also your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, and how you choose to react to your circumstances. He said, zone two is everything else. Zone two is your reputation, what people think about you, the past and the future, and death, life. These things are zone two. COVID-19 would certainly be zone two. And I've had a couple of people say, well, what would the Stoics know about something like COVID-19? Well, actually, in the time of Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor, there was a plague that was much more horrendous and went on for much longer than COVID-19 would. So actually, the Stoics had significant experience with this. And Epictetus said that the key thing when you're faced with these big challenges is that you need to focus on what you can control, zone one, and refuse to invest your energy in that which you can't control. right? So I've got a little thought experiment here, and people can just pop into the chat if they've done this. So who has recently invested their energy in some dickhead, right? Just pop it into the chat if you have recently invested your energy into some dickhead. Now, the thing I really want you to think about is, how'd that shit work out for you? Was that an awesome investment of your energy or not so good? And most people would say, it wasn't a good investment of my energy. The Stoics would say the fault lies with you, not with the dickhead, because dickheads, and they didn't call them dickheads, they said challenging people are there to test us, to test our character. And if we give in to these challenging people and we invest our energy, that is just a flaw in our character. So they were pretty hardcore around character. But I think it's really, really useful for today. And again, I'm going to come back to this at the end. But when we're talking about the stuff that we can control, Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. And I think this is something that's very relevant for us all now. That uncontrollable is the whole COVID-19 and the impact on our industry and beyond. But we do have power over our mind. Now, with the whole idea of focusing on what you can control, this is what the app is all about. So, as I said, I am doing a PhD in resilience, and so the Learn section in the app that some of you will have seen, I know there's over 300 people have already got in and done the surveys, and the Learn section contains a whole heap of information around resilience, and I'm not just going to tell you guys that you just need to be grateful or write down 3 good things that happened that day and everything will be awesome. I am into the whole psychophysiological aspect of resilience, and I'll get into that in a little bit more. Other stuff you have in the app, there's a whole heap of workouts for all different fitness levels. Level 1 is for 55-year-old Mr. and Mrs. Nurkenfurken who are out of shape, and level 5 is pretty hardcore, and it's all body weight stuff. So it's stuff that you can do at home. We have a whole heap of guided breathing sessions, which I'll chat about in a minute, and guided mindfulness sessions that will really help you through. There's healthy recipes, and there's a number of different mindset tools and exercises that you can do, and resources. And the key thing in these resources, you'll see the user guides for the app, because there's quite a lot in the app. But the key thing is the ritual board, and I'm going to go through this later, but it's really about doing the things that we know can help you to help yourself, right? The stuff that you can control. That's really the key of all of this, is giving you the background information and the tools, and then a way to track your habits. And I'll show you some results a little bit later. And then there's a whole social feed. And again, I'll talk about the importance of social connection. So the whole idea is really about these rituals, these things that we can all do every day that are nailed on, proven by science to positively impact your physical or mental health and your resilience. And so the ones that are underlined, they're the ones I'm going to go through. And so we'll just go through this now, and then I'll give you a bit of a live tour through the app. So the first thing I want to talk about, this is a really powerful exercise that I recommend that everybody does this week. And if you've got little kids, this is a really cool thing to do with your kids. And I want you to think of your mind, brain/mind, as like a bonsai, this bonsai tree. And I used to have several of them, all of which I've killed. But the idea is you put this in a little small pot, and that constrains the size that it grows to. But you can also hang things off the branches and tie them and all of this and clip it, and you shape the tree by the external inputs. And I want you to think of your mind as exactly like this. So Amit Goswami is a professor of theoretical physics. He's an astrophysicist at Oregon University, and he's also a philosopher and a really, really sharp cookie. And he said something I'll never forget about experience. He said, we do not perceive reality directly. We perceive reality through the mirror of memory. What he means by that is that your brain, your personal bonsai in your head, has been shaped by your experiences. So no two people have got a brain/mind that is identical. All of your experiences in your life subtly shape your brain. We know that strong emotional experiences have a disproportionate effect. They encode lots of memory and rewiring within your brain. and especially those strong emotional experiences that you had when you were a kid. And because that's when your brain is growing so much and is so much more responsive to all of the inputs. So we know that everybody has a unique filter through which you then view the world. Now, typical Western psychology is lie down on the couch, certain types of psychotherapy, lie down on the couch, let's explore what has impacted your brain in order to try and then work out what to do. I actually think there's a better way of doing this, and it's the approach used by the Stoic philosophers, and it's very similar to Japanese psychology and a form of cognitive behavior therapy called acceptance commitment therapy. And all of these combine in this little exercise. So we're going to do, again, a little thought experiment. So this is you, right? Normal you. And every person here, and just again, put it in the chat if you can relate to a version of you that's a little bit shit, right? This is what I call your inner gremlin, right? It's you when you're not at your best. And we all have an inner gremlin. And the difference between normal you and your inner gremlin, this is what I call the deficit. And it's driven by this sort of stuff, right? So negative self-talk, overthinking, worry, anxiety, a victim mentality, self-criticism. There are a number of different things. And the key thing to understand is that your gremlin's a bit of a chameleon. So it can take different guises. Sometimes it's just negative. Sometimes it drags you down into an overthinking vortex where you can spend a serious amount of time. Sometimes it's just worried about the future. It's anxious about things. Sometimes it's the victim mentality. Why have they done this to us? Why have they done lockdown? Why the hell did this COVID happen? You know, them wanting to blame other people. And sometimes it's self-criticism. You're not good enough. You're fat. You're shit. You're not as good as them. You're not a good parent. You're not a good wife or husband or whatever it may be. So it's understanding that this gremlin takes certain guises. But the key thing, and this is where Stoicism, Japanese psychology, and acceptance commitment therapy are all in violent agreement. They all say that everybody has an inner gremlin, right? And trying to get rid of it is really not the right approach. So many people want to get rid of their anxiety or their negative self-talk. These three practices all say you need to just coexist with it, but it's about where your attention goes. And if anybody remembers the movie Gremlins, the gremlin becomes energized when you feed it. So it's when we feed, we feed it by paying attention. When you pay attention to the negative self-talk, the victim mentality, the overthinking, it actually gets worse. And what we know from a neuroscience perspective is when you pay attention to stuff, it actually strengthens those neural pathways, right? So you're actually strengthening your gremlin by paying attention to it. And now the key thing that the Stoics said is that when you're challenged and you feel that you're not being your best, you consult your inner sage. And the difference between you and your inner sage, your inner sage is you at your best. This is the gap that we can all close by this sort of stuff. The zonal thinking that we talked about, focusing on the stuff you can control. And gratitude, which I'll talk about shortly. Taking responsibility for your own thoughts, behaviors, but also the cards that fate has dealt you. But more importantly, it's about a positive bias and positive action. Despite how you might feel, it's about taking positive action, despite that you may not feel like doing it, despite your shitty circumstances. It's about every day moving forwards and taking positive action. And when you create this character, and as I said, there's an exercise which I'll point you guys to in the app, and it's then about mentally rehearsing and being your best self every day, lots of times a day. So this is part of the exercise which is in the app. And you'll see it in there under the mindset tools. So you write down, you know, what do they both say first thing in the morning? What do they say, your gremlin and your sage, when they're faced by the challenges? And what character traits or virtues do they both have, right? And the key thing here is to focus on your inner sage. What are your character strengths when you're at your best, right? And you write them down. And then there's the plus ones. So the plus ones are things that you would like to have a little bit more of. So I might be filling that out and go, well, actually, and I might think, I've worked with Jo for a number of years. I really like the way she's calm under pressure. I would like to have more of that character trait. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down that my inner sage is calm under pressure. So I'm going to create my best self with a little sprinkling of steroids. And the say hi to bit is they need a name. Both of them need a name, and this is really, really crucial. And it's what then, when you say to yourself, oh, thanks, Gremlin, this isn't very helpful right now. Thanks for the story you're telling me. And then you consult your inner sage. And this is a form, a technique, a cognitive technique called distancing, self-distancing. And we know it really helps us to deal with emotional situations or to make decisions. So if you've got kids, and I highly recommend you do it with your kids. So this is my little dude, Oscar. Probably 4 years ago, he was 6 at the time, right? And you can tell from his drawing. And we did, he did the inner gremlin and his inner sage. And I asked my kids to draw them, because when you draw them, you bring the characters to life, right? But what they did is they did speech bubbles, and I never asked them to do the speech bubbles. And what I want you to look at is Derek, and the big dark cloud that's over Derek, that's his inner gremlin. But what he wrote in the speech bubble, I found pretty astounding. Derek is saying, I will crush the good ones, and I will be the king of Oscar's head. How cool is that shit? Think about it. From a 6-year-old, sometimes they're really insightful, because that's what happens, right? If you listen to that negative self-talk, if you pay attention to it, if you pay attention to the gremlin, they crush the good self-talk, they crush the good characters, and they become the king of your head if you choose to let it. That's the key thing. And this is all about attention. So guys, my inner sage is called Jev, J-E-V, named after these 3 guys. J for Jim Stockdale, and E for Epictetus, that Stoic philosopher we've talked about, and V for Viktor Frankl. I read his book as a 17-year-old, and it had a pretty profound effect on me. And Frankl was a psychiatrist in the Second World War. He was a Jew who got sent to Auschwitz and had endured horrible, horrible stuff in Auschwitz. But what got him through, 2 things. Number 1 was the thought of his wife and hopefully seeing her again. But secondly, was that he decided that the key thing for him was to actually start to create some good out of the horrors that happened. So he created a new branch of psychotherapy in his head based on the horrors of what happened in Auschwitz, because he realized as a psychiatrist, he had a skill set that no one else had. And that if he died, all his friends and family members would have died for nothing. So he had to survive so that some good could come out of it. And when he got out, he published his manuscript on, it's called Logotherapy. And it's now a highly successful treatment for anxiety and depression. And one of the key tenets of logotherapy, he said he realized in Auschwitz, man can do terrible things to fellow man, particularly in times of war. They can put you through immense pain and suffering. They can take away all of your dignity, all your pride, all of your belongings. They can even take away all of your loved ones. He said, man can take from you everything but one thing. And he called it the last of human freedoms. The ability to choose how you react to your circumstances, to choose your own attitude, to choose your own way. He said, no one can ever take that from you. So if we think about these 3 guys, and we think about our inner gremlin and our inner sage, all 3 of these guys would be very supportive of the idea that every day you get to choose what version of you is in control in your head. And particularly when you're faced with challenging situations, we all get to choose what version of us fronts up to that situation. And the key thing to say to yourself, there's 2 questions you can ask yourself. When you find your inner gremlin is in your head, or when you're faced with a challenging situation, I say to myself, what would Jev do right now? My inner sage, what would Jev do right now? Or the other question you can ask, when you've written down those character strengths of you at your best, what action do I need to take in order to exhibit those character strengths, right? Both of those are really, really useful cognitive approaches that we can do to help us through those challenging situations. So that is the inner gremlin, inner sage thing. And as I said, there's the exercise in the app to do. The next one I want to talk about is exercise. Now, and again, put in the chat, you guys know that exercise is good for your mental well-being, right? Most people know that. So just pop in the chat why that is, right? What does exercise do for your brain? What does it release that actually makes you feel good? Now, I can't see the chat right now, but I'm guessing that a lot of people are writing in endorphins. And lots of people know about endorphins, but I tell you what, if I was a monoamine, if you look down the bottom left here, I'd be very pissed off because endorphins get all the credits, but your monoamines are hugely important for your brain function. And your monoamines are three neurotransmitters: serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, or noradrenaline, same term. Now, and serotonin is important for mood and sleep. And dopamine is important for pleasure, reward, but also goal-directed behavior and motivation, right? To get shit done. And norepinephrine is another feel-good chemical. Now, you look at the two major classes of antidepressant drugs. They're called SSRIs and SNRIs. They stand for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors and selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. Bit of a mouthful for a Monday morning. But what that means is those drugs act on the serotonin and norepinephrine that you produce to make them more available in the synapses to make your brain function better. What we know is that exercise increases your production, which is a more effective strategy, which is why randomized control trials and meta-analysis show that exercise beats antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication hands down every time for both minor and major depression, because it's boosting our production. Now, I want to take you back to that quote that I talked about at the start, that the current human genome requires and expects us to be highly physically active for normal functioning. This is the key thing. Most people understand that exercise can boost your mood, but what most people don't get is if you're not currently highly physically active, you're depriving your brains of the neurotransmitters it needs to function normally, right? Which is why we place such an emphasis on being active in the app, right? And so that's just a baseline of getting lots and lots of steps, making sure if you're in Victoria, particularly in Melbourne, you get out every day during your times that you're allowed out. But for everybody, making sure you're getting out, particularly into sunlight as well. I can talk about vitamin D at the end and the importance in protecting against COVID. But also it's about doing more vigorous exercise, about getting out of breath and about lifting heavy shit, right? And it can be body weight stuff or lifting weights. And that plus getting out of breath plus baseline of lots of movement is really what we need to have our brain functioning really well. We know that exercise actually controls our gene expression. And every time you exercise, there's 3 waves of gene expression, right? And the first are these stress response genes. So I've talked to thousands and thousands of corporates over the years. A number of people who've said to me, I don't like exercise because it's uncomfortable. It's supposed to be bloody uncomfortable. That is why it is good for you. The reason that exercise is good for you is it's a stressor on our either muscular, skeletal, or our cardiovascular systems, and your body responds by releasing stress response genes. These are called heat shock proteins, and these are magical proteins. They get inside your cells and help protect them against damage, right? But they also then trigger 2 more waves of gene expression. Your metabolic priority genes just make your system at an ecosystem level, at a cellular level, they make it function better in both your body and your brain, which is why exercise is really good for our physical and our mental health. And then it also improves your mitochondrial function. So your mitochondria, they're like the batteries of your cells. And when you get damaged mitochondria, that's when you get premature aging and disease. If anybody's ever seen a photograph of the Rolling Stone Keith Richards, that dude has got damaged mitochondria, I can tell you right now. But exercise helps repair the damage, and that's why it's been called the most potent anti-aging therapy that we currently know of. So that's exercise, and I think most people can relate to how strong the science is about exercise. So let me try to talk you into something a little bit more left field. And just in the chat, just pop in if you currently do regular cold showers, right? If you're in Queensland, doesn't really count, right? Or north of Western Australia. But here is one of the studies that really got me onto it. This was a randomized control trial, right? Where they randomly split people into 2 groups, measured their health, their sickness, their absenteeism. Half of them, they got to do 30 seconds minimum of a cold shower at the end of their normal shower every day. And then they measured again at 6 months and at a year. And they found at the end of the year that people who had the regular cold showers had a 30% in reduction in sickness and absenteeism. Now that is off the charts crazy, 30% reduction. And if anybody wants a better immune system right now, cold showers are an awesome way to do it. We also know that they are potential treatment for depression. This was highlighted in 2008. Very recently, this year, there's a number of case studies in the British Medical Journal showing people becoming cured from depression just from cold water exposure, which is really important. And then so here's Oscar again, and this is that. Look, the reason he looks like this, we're just back from Bali, right? He doesn't normally have that shit in his hair, but he's about 3 seconds into a freezing cold shower. Now, before anybody phones Child Protection Services on me, the reason he's in a cold shower is that we got back from Bali and I read the research, and I thought, this is compelling. I need to start running experiments, right? And so it's not what you think. I didn't experiment with him. I did it myself, and I said, right, I need to get in my shower. I need to have a cold shower. And I was having a warm shower, and I was about to turn it to cold. And I said to myself, right, they said 30 seconds. And then this little voice came in my head and said, it's your first one. It's winter. You don't have to do 30 seconds, just do 20. Now, I'm rather embarrassed to say that I wimped out and I listened to my little inner gremlin, and I said, right, I'm going to do 20. And I turned it to cold just as Oscar happened to walk into the bathroom. So picture the scene. Oscar walks into the bathroom and I'm in the shower and I'm going, and he's kind of looking at me going, what are you doing, Dad? I'm like, I'm on a cold shower, buddy. And he's like, okay, what are you doing that for? And I couldn't really think of anything at the time. I just said, because it makes you tough, buddy. And he went, really? And I finished, and he's still standing there. And he said, how long did you do, Dad? I said, I did 20 seconds, mate. And he said, get out. I'm going to kick your ass, right? So when he got, and I knew it was going to happen, I said, right, mate, go. And I had my phone because I was timing myself. So I took a photograph. This is him about 3 seconds into his freezing cold shower. And this is Oscar 30 seconds into his freezing cold shower, right? Look at that focus. And he's doing a technique called box breathing, which is a technique that I taught him and is in the app, but I never thought to use. And he just went straight into it. So got to 30 seconds. And I said, no, that's 30 seconds. And he just stopped the shower and he walked out like this. Loser, right? So I'm rather embarrassed to say I started a little competition with my 8-year-old at the time. But here's what we know. Cold showers release norepinephrine. Remember that feel-good chemical in your brain? And this is why people say it boosts the mood, and why we think it's a useful treatment for depression and potentially anxiety as well. The same stress response proteins that are released during exercise are released when you expose yourself to cold water. And we think that these heat shock proteins have actually got a cross transfer effect. That means you become more resistant to other types of stress by exposing yourself to regular vigorous physical activity and regular exercise. And we also know your immune system improves, which is really important for today, right? But the other thing for me, as well as all of the biology, a really important thing is the psychology. And this is about grit. It's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so so this book, I think you guys can all see, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So Marcus Aurelius was emperor of Rome just after, I think it was about 200 AD. And he wrote in his diary, this is actually his diary that somebody found after his death and published, right? And he never meant it to be published, but it's going to be translated into a whole heap of languages. And I was reading this a couple of years ago, and I came across a passage where Marcus says to himself that he should be doing regular cold baths and regular vigorous exercise, because he says they both develop character. And it is this character that you will need to help you face challenges in your life. So 2,000 years ago, you have the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man on the planet, and telling himself to do resilience training through cold water exposure and vigorous exercise, right? So if it's good enough for a Roman emperor, I think it's good enough for all of us, right? So the thinking's like this: if you can't voluntarily turn that lovely warm shower to cold for 30 seconds every day to get all of these benefits, then how are you going to deal with really hard shit when it drops in your lap? So this is about resilience training and that what we call that cross transfer effect. Now, something that really helps in the shower, as general in helping you deal with stress, is different types of breath work. But the one I really want to focus on is box breathing. So this is a technique that's used by US Special Forces when they're on patrol to control their stress or arousal and put their brains in an optimal state. Now, if anybody knows anything about Special Forces soldiers, they know they don't do fluffy bullshit, right? They do stuff that has been demonstrated to have an impact. And this basically, you breathe in for 4 or 5 seconds, you hold for 4 or 5, you breathe out for 4 or 5, you hold for 4 or 5, and repeat. So it's only taken our scientists about 3,000 years to catch up with the knowledge of yogis. That long, slow breathing actually can affect your heart and your brain. And we now know it's through the vagus nerve. That when you're stressed, it's top-down control of the vagus nerve. Your heartbeat gets faster, your blood pressure goes up, and your breathing gets faster, your digestive system's affected. But we know that when you breathe in certain rhythms, it actually reduces your heart rate, reduces your blood pressure, and can bring your brain out of a stress state. And my wife, Carly, coaches lots of people with anxiety and overthinkers, and so many people have had their lives transformed by just learning how to breathe, right? And if you're struggling to get to sleep, is doing box breathing. If you've got little kids who are a bit anxious, teach them how to breathe like the soldiers breathe. Particularly little boys will absolutely love it. And it's a real core skill. And we got lots of stuff, guided breathing sessions in the app. Now, guys, gratitude, this one, I kind of bumped into this in 1992. When I took a year off university, I went backpacking around the world. And I spent 3 months in India. And India in 1992 was pretty bonkers. And one day I bumped into this guy who had leprosy and elephantitis, right? And it was full on, really, really full on. And he was begging, I gave him some money, and off he went. And he's in this like homemade rickety go-kart. And as he went off, I went to walk away, and then something in my head just clicked and said, just watch this guy until you can no longer see him. Never, ever forget this guy, never. And the next time you're feeling sorry for yourself, just remember this guy, because what has he ever done to deserve leprosy and elephantitis when you are perfectly healthy? So be grateful. And ever since then, I've done a gratitude ritual, not knowing at the time all of these positive benefits that come out of regular gratitude. Now, and then let's make this real about COVID. When COVID happened and we realized, Jesus, my business is pretty screwed, I sat down with my wife, Carly, and we did something the Stoics talk about, negative visualization. So, you know, you visualize stuff that could go wrong in your life and in order to help you to deal with it. And we thought, well, you know what, this is pretty screwed, and this is going to go on for a while. You know, I had speakers bureaus who booked me say, you know what, we'll be fine. September, we're all going to be back doing conferences. And I thought, no way, this ain't going to happen. But anyway, we sat down, we thought, well, what's the worst that would realistically happen? Well, we thought, well, look, we're both pretty healthy, and we know how to positively optimize our immune system. But if this goes on for a sustained period of time, you know, our business can be pretty screwed, and we might well lose our house, right? That we work so hard for. And we thought, you know what, that is a reasonable consequence. But if we lose our house, at least we'll know that our kids don't have bone cancer, right? So it's even when there's hard stuff that you still look for the reasons to be grateful, because there's always reasons to be grateful. And it's not that you give up, right? And it's that staunch acceptance of reality and a willingness to face it with determination, right? So I'm pivoting my business to the online space, right? So you try to do what you can, but also with that, just remember all of the things that we have to be grateful about, because they're really important. Now, something else that's really important, the last one I want to talk about before a quick app tour, is something called the TAP code that came out of that prison camp, the Hanoi Hilton. And here's what the Hanoi Hilton looked like. And these are some of these guys in this. Now, some of these guys did 7 or 8 years. Some of them did 3 or 4 years in solitary confinement as well. But they got through. And they got through because of Jim Stockdale. And he gave them a mission, right? And it's that whole idea about purpose. And we talk a lot about that in the app. But as well as giving them a purpose, return with honor, he gave them a set of virtues or character traits, right? And so unity, he said to them, gentlemen, we will probably be here for years. This will be horrendous, more horrendous than most of us can imagine. Nobody will get through this alive. The only way we will get through this is if we are united. He said we need to be all in it together. There are to be no splinter groups, nobody left on the outside. We've all got to be together. He talked about brutal honesty, first with yourself, then with each other. And then he said, you know what? Everybody will screw up in here. It's a highly stressful environment. Everybody's going to screw up, but everybody deserves a second chance. And these were the values that these guys lived by. And they got wind from one of the prison guards and that they were going to be put in solitary confinement. So they quickly created this thing and taught it to everybody called the tap code. And it was a way that they could tap out the letters of the alphabet by tapping on the wall or on the pipes or whatever it may be. And Stockdale said to every one of them, he said, get on the wall, learn the tap code and share information, help each other, support each other, remind each other of the mission and each prisoner of war's role in that mission. He said, if your brother is taken out of his cell and tortured, when he comes back, you get on the wall, you tap to him, you tell him that you love him. If he tells you that he has brought shame because he's given the enemy secrets, you tell him that you've done worse. You support him. Now, Dennis Charney is a neuropsychiatrist who interviewed every single one of those prisoners of war. And he said that lifelong friendships were struck up in that prison camp between people who never met each other face to face because they were in the cell next to each other, the cell across the way, and they tapped and they helped each other through their adverse times. So this is all about the power of social connection and one of the reasons why we're together in this app. And some of the evidence, guys, we know that helping others, being altruistic, improves your own mental health. When you give social support, and you may benefit from even more than the person who received it. We know from studies of Vietnam veterans, and this has also been repeated in Iraq and Afghanistan, that there is much higher PTSD, anxiety, and depression in people who either don't have social support networks or who don't use it, the people who bottle it up. It is the people who talk about it that actually do much better. And when you have a genuine "are you okay" conversation with someone, or what I call a tap code conversation, oxytocin and vasopressin are released in both people's brains, right? Now, oxytocin is the hormone of love and trust, and vasopressin is the hormone of social bonding, but they are both very potent anti-stress hormones. So when you have those conversations, powerful anti-stress hormones are released in both people's brains, which is why social connection is so important right now, and more than ever. And I'll remind you of what Stockdale said: get on the wall, learn the tap code, and share information. Help each other, support each other, remind each other of the mission, and each prisoner of war's role in that mission. So what's your mission going to be around COVID-19? And what we did this morning, after we got that news yesterday in Victoria, we're down in the Mornington Peninsula, so we're essentially another 7 weeks at least of pretty strenuous lockdown. We sat down as a family and said, right, guys, let's redo our family values, let's redo our goals, our mission, and for COVID-19, right? And we broke it up to work, energy, and connection. Work or school for the kids, right? Energy being health and well-being. And so what is your COVID legacy going to be? So what I'd like you to do, last little thought experiment, is I want you to think about 20, 30, 40 years, whatever, when you're in your 80s and you have your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren sitting on your knee, and you're telling them a story about what will undoubtedly be the defining event of our generation. You're talking to them about COVID-19. What is your legacy going to be? Are you one of those people who fell apart and got fat, out of shape, or are you one of those people who actually used it as an opportunity to sharpen your character or to practice some virtues, to look out and help others rather than just looking in, to actually metamorphosize and come out of this hibernation, if you like, as a butterfly rather than as a bear who comes out hungry and with a sore head and grumpy, right? So are you going to be a butterfly or a bear? And one of the key things is really about focusing on the stuff that you can control. And the last thing before we do a quick little lap tour is what's written on my bathroom mirror right now. So memento mori at the top, I got this from Marcus Aurelius. And he said to himself, remember that at any point you can die. At any time you can leave this earth. And he said it not to be negative or morose, but just to remind himself that life is a gift. and that he should wake up every morning really grateful to be alive. And he should use that thought that he could die at any point to actually shape his actions and his behaviors for the day. And that's linked into down the bottom. You've all heard of Carpe Diem, which is seize the day, but it's really hard to seize an entire 24 hours. It's much easier to seize moments. And that's what Carpe Punctum is about. Seizing the little moments. And when you find your gremlin, just to say, thanks, gremlin, you're not helpful right now, to bring your sage, right? Seizing those little moments to do something for others or to help sharpen your character. That's really the key thing. So what I want to do is a quick app tour. Now, guys, and just before I do, here, this is fresh results this morning from a bunch of, it's actually, I won't say the name of the company, but it's oh, actually, fuck, it's written there. So it's Defense Health, who are basically a health fund. And this is a number of their people. So you can see at the start of the survey, here's the survey that you guys did, only 8% had likely high well-being and 50% likely had an issue. And by the end of it, only 10% likely had an issue and 48% had likely high well-being, right? And then if we look at their resilience, you can see that 22% had low resilience at the start and only 2% at the end. And with high resilience went from 6 to 24%, right? A quadrupling of those with high resilience. So what we know, and I've got stats like these for lots of different companies who've been on it. What we know about it, if you do the program for 4 weeks, it will very likely have a very positive impact on your mental health and well-being, as well as your physical health, right? But if you don't do the program, then it's not going to have an impact, right? So what I want to do is just show this screen. Joe, can you just come on and tell me that the screen has changed and you can see the app? Can you just take yourself off mute?
Yeah, I can see it all.
Awesome, right. So just, guys, a quick couple of minutes on here. So the key thing is your ritual board, right? And so here's a ritual board. This is, I'm in with another company on this one. So if you look at my leaderboard points, I'm going to take off gratitude because I did it this morning. I can either go to the section, right? And there's a whole list of things that I can be thankful for. COVID-19 is going to end one day. Or you can type in your own and it will pop in here as a list, right? You can log your gratitude, you can upload an image, that sort of stuff, right? So I'm going to log my gratitude on there, and then I'm going to come back. Sorry, it's running it really slow here because I'm broadcasting, but you can see now that my leaderboard points have gone up, right? So you can toggle your leaderboard between you and your team, right? And you'll see where you are, you'll see where your team is. So there's where you can see the team, and so you see the impact your points have. Guys, the key thing that I would recommend to everybody is pick a ritual, right? I'll just pick cold showers for one. And you click on that ritual and then you can set reminders, right? This is, and download the app. You can use the website here, app.mindbodybrain.com.au, or you can download the app, and the app is better because you can set reminders and it'll do a little pop-up on your phone. This is really key, that little trigger to get back in and actually do it. It's that little reminder, because particularly when we're stressed and busy, we kind of forget to do the things that are really, really useful for us all, right? So using that reminder thing is I think it's absolutely gold, right? And the learn section, I talked about that a little bit earlier. You go in and watch the videos. The ones that I recommend that you watch this week are the actioning your life, right? So that'll explain the whole idea about taking positive action, the whole thinking behind the ritual board. And you can do the stress overview if you have a bit more time. And then in the toolbox, this is where we have a number of other things. So workouts, you can click on that, select the workouts, you can preview the exercises. Again, this works better in the app. So you can just stick it in the corner of your room and off you go. And there's a whole heap. Not only do we have body weight workouts, and you don't need very much space, but you can click here. If anybody has any mobility issues, there's a whole heap of mobility and flexibility exercises that you can do. And I used to have a company that trained personal trainers. So we kind of know what we're talking about in terms of exercise. Mindfulness, you pop in here and you'll see there's a number of box breathing sessions, guided ones. So you can click on any of those and it's going to come up with a guided, you'll press start. I won't play it obviously, but that will take you through a guided breathing session. And then meditation, there are other different meditations just to help people who've got busy heads, really, really useful. And we'll be adding more of those as we go. And the other thing, if you click on mindset tools, here's some of the exercises. So the Sage versus Gremlin, there's one on purpose, one on getting your shit done. And there's a whole journal that you can download. It's a partner journal. You click on that, you can download the PDF and go through it, right? And the other thing, click on resources, the app user guides are in there, right? And how to connect the tracker. So if you've got any kind of a device, a watch, a Fitbit, a Garmin, and just connect your tracker and it'll automatically suck your steps in, right? There's recommended books and videos. Click on the app user guides and you can see how to do things. So you can see how to edit teams as well, right? And I'll just show you something while we're here. So if I'm going to click on the top right in my profile, and if you click on this, this is where you can actually upload a little photograph, right, on there. You can do that in the app, and you upload. Sorry, I need to go to settings. I told a lie there. So you go to settings, and you can choose a file, right? So you can upload a little image. You can change your name into something a bit more random, and you can change your password if you want. That's where you can decide when you get push notifications, whether you get email ones, and who sees your activity, right? So you have complete control over your settings in there. The other thing is teams. And so particularly for team leaders, you can go in and change the name of your team and you can choose an avatar. And that just works really well in the leaderboard. So you just choose an image and upload it. You can also, this is where you can delete members as team captain, right? Now, if you go into this as an individual and you see the different teams, you can click on the name of here and send a request to join it, right? So for new people who come into the app and they want to join your team, and they can do that. Now, there are limits to how many people can come in, so let us know if that becomes an issue.
Hey, so Paul, I just want to ask a question, because obviously we have created, so some people may have emailed with 3 people in their team, but because we recommend teams of minimum 4 and we've actually added more people to teams, guys, don't go in and delete other people in your team because that'll affect people that we've added to your team.
Yes, exactly. Now, the only thing that I would say is when to delete, if you are a team captain, is if someone is not engaging, right? So if you go to, and you need to be on the app for this, but if you go to the ritual board, right? And you go scroll down to the bottom to the leaderboard. Sorry, it's just taking a couple of minutes to refresh because I'm broadcasting here. But if I go down here and look at my team, I can click on my team name and it'll drop down and show me the individuals who are in the team, right? And I can see if somebody's not doing anything, right? So if they're not doing anything, so I click on head office team, and what I'll see is the breakdown, and I can see if someone just for 2 weeks hasn't been doing anything, then you can remove them, right? But as Joe said, don't get in and remove. What was that? I'll give them a post.
Yes. Get them to improve their game.
That's right. Now on that, you go to the interact, and this is what people are doing, right? So it's going to load in when people are doing rituals. You can put a post in here by clicking on the new, and it's the same thing in the app. You just click on the plus and you can put a post. You can upload photographs if you've had a healthy lunch, whatever, but you can also do messages. So you can click on add and you can message your team, right? So that's the way to really get around each other, is sending those messages. And this is how you do a nudge. You'll get in, it's a bit slow to load, but you can get in and nudge people and give them little bits of encouragement. So that I just wanted to quickly run through the app, and that's a bit of an overview. So but yeah, Paul, go in and set some reminders for your ritual board. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Paul, a couple of people obviously asking about friends and family access.
Yes. Yeah. So you can actually in there, let me see, it's in the interact, it's in friends. So you can see here, invite a friend, family member to join. So if you click on that, and you'll be able to type in their email address. Now there's this, I need to get in, somebody had sent that to me. I've got to go in and fix that this afternoon. So there will be, I haven't given people invitations. You will have invitations for 2 people to go in and do it. So I'll sort that out, but that's how you actually do it. Or you just give them the access code, the same access code, and they will, when they come in, they select friends and family, right?
Oh, okay, great. So guys, I just want to reiterate, some of you have signed up to this launch webinar without actually telling me that you want to be part of the process. So haven't read the instructions properly, but that's okay. We're welcoming you into the family. So if you're one of those people, then please use the after code. So download the Resilient Mind app and sign up using the code AFTER456. That will give you an opportunity to become part of the program. And if your office has registered and you're wanting to join that team, you can actually contact the person who's the captain of your team and ask them to add you.
Cool. Yes, that's exactly right. Now, if you didn't get an email this morning, check your junk mail. The email went out, and in fact, it went out twice because I screwed up. So it's the second email that you'll have got from info@up at Mind Body Brain. So just check your junk mail and your spam before you go hassling and saying it. Now, if you've been uploaded in the system, you can't use the access code. You've got to actually click on that link, because if you use the access code and you try to register, it'll say you're already in the system, right? That email address has been taken. So you've got to go in and find that email. If you can't, or you've deleted it accidentally, then just let us know and we'll resend it.
Now, if you're trying to log in and it says code not valid or password doesn't match, your email is actually in the system. So just put in your email and go forgot password, and you'll get an email in your inbox and you can reset your password and access the system that way. So I'll just repeat that. If you're having trouble logging in and it's saying password not valid or change password and password's different, just put in your email address, the one that was registered for the program, click forgot password, you will get an email, and then you can reset your password and access it that way. Now, Paul, what do we do for people that have checked their junk box and can't find the email?
Yeah, if they've checked their junk box and they can't find the email and they were definitely registered in the system, look, I think first port of call, if you're not 100% sure you were registered, try to use the access code. If it says that your email is taken, you can actually just click on forgot password, right? And that's the easiest way, is just to go in, try and log in, and rather than register, and go forgot password. So let's just be clear, reiterate that. If you haven't been in the system, you go in and you click register and you use the access code. If you were in the system, you go in and you log in with your email and just click forgot password, and it'll send you another one, and check your spam.
And
because the chances are,
sorry, Paul, go.
Sorry, the chances are, if you didn't get the email this morning, then it's gone to your spam, and it'll go to your spam again.
Or you've, I noticed a couple of Hello World agents, for example, spelt the Hello World wrong, just a typo, so it probably went to the Ibiza. So yes, we've got to.
Yeah, and if that's the case, in that case, if you've gone in, you've tried to reset password, you tried the access code, and you still have no joy, then email us, because probably your email was spelled wrong.
Yeah. So just again, that access code is AFTER456. So please give that a go, guys. I will slowly make my way through the 60 emails that I received this morning with people having problems accessing. But again, if you have somebody that you want to register as part of your team, just use the access code AFTER456. Please give that to them. That will save me a couple of emails.
And guys, we know that the email is working, because we've already had hundreds get in and do the survey. So just try and those things that we've said, and if you still can't do it, then there'll be an issue with your email.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Paul, well, this was absolutely amazing. Thank you. I've had so many comments throughout the webinar, just talking about your knowledge, your energy, your passion, and just a sheer excitement for people to get started. And I think it's going to take a while for us to all get used to the app. So guys, play around with the desktop version, play around with it on your app, get familiar, click the I button to learn about it, understand the information behind it. Don't expect to be an expert today. It might take you a couple of days to get across it, but just really enjoy the process. And if you're in lockdown and isolated, just use that time to really absorb this information and pick things on the ritual board that are of interest to you, because you can actually edit your own ritual board and the different challenges that you want to undertake each day.
That's right.
We are doing another session this afternoon at 2:00, which will be the same content, but both webinars have been recorded, and this afternoon will be recorded, and will be placed on the AFTR website so that you can watch it at a later date or share it with a colleague that isn't able to join. Any final words, Paul?
Yes. Are we able to do a poll?
Yeah. Yes. I don't know if I have to preset it, so.
Well, if we can't do a poll, if people can put in the chat or questions, if they would like me to run another session in the next couple of weeks, I can do a deep dive on nutrition. I can do a deep dive on stress and the immune system. I can do one on happiness, meaning, and purpose. So if people want more,
I'm getting yes, hell yes, definitely yes. Yes, right. More nutrition.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
I'll work that out with Joe, and we'll communicate with you guys.
Yeah, that's great. And guys, you're going to get a quick survey following this webinar, so please take the time to fill that out. It'll take 30 seconds, literally, multiple choice. That'll go back to Paul, and he'll get some feedback on relevance, helpfulness, enjoyment, etc. So that'd be great. And I think what we can just say is really enjoy the 4 weeks, guys. We're going to connect with you throughout the 4 weeks. As Paul just mentioned, run another webinar, but really deep dive into that app, become familiar with it, and encourage members of your team to get involved. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Carpe punctum. Get some shit done.
See you at 2:00, Paul.
Yes, indeed. See ya.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, guys.